Hello and welcome to this video. The majority of it will be clips of me painting the puppy portrait that you can see on the right, but first I wanted to talk a little bit about the art supplies. I recently got this set of 24 half pens of Horadam Aquarelle by Schmincke. So watercolor, artist quality watercolor, and it's the first artist quality watercolor set that I've gotten. And well, the reason for it, I live in Germany, so they are readily available here. And the main reason is that I've been painting with the Schmincke Akademie, so the student grade watercolor before, and I really already liked how those performed, and I figured, yeah, if I want to upgrade to artist quality, I might as well stick with Schmincke because I know that they're really good quality, and yeah. So I'm not a watercolor professional, obviously, if you can tell by me saying that this is my first artist quality set, I guess. I really appreciate about watercolor that you can get, different colors have different effects, and of course some of them are more transparent, others are more opaque. They flow differently, some of them are granulating, others are not, and so I find that really interesting that basically every color has its own set of characteristics that you kind of need to learn about and that you kind of need to figure out. And there's always an element of unpredictability with watercolor. You never really know exactly what the blooms will do, how the colors will flow on the page, and what they will look like when they're dry. So there's lots of stuff that you can figure out, and I really appreciate that about watercolor in general. And the Schmincke is no exception to that part of watercolor. Now on to the puppy portrait. I basically started out with a wash of different greens for the background because I didn't know what to do with the background, so I just opted for a wash of different colors. And then I basically started the portrait by filling in the main shapes with the colors that I need. So for the black parts, I started with a light gray wash just to fill in the areas where the black fur would be, and the other black parts like the nose and the eyes. And I mixed the gray with indigo and sepia, and I didn't mix a whole lot in the beginning. I kind of mixed the color as I went because I kind of wanted some parts to be a bit more blue and other parts to be a little bit more brown, just to add some interest to the colors. So I basically intentionally only mixed a little bit of the color and then kind of threw in more as I went. For the really, really dark parts later, I added some of the ivory black that is also part of the 24 set. But the majority of the black that you can see is basically a mixture of non-black colors. As far as the brown fur goes, I believe it's a mixture of light ochre and burnt sienna and maybe Naples yellow or something. I'm not quite sure. I kind of just mixed some of the lighter browns together, but seeing how opaque this looks, I'm pretty sure that I put some of the Naples yellow because I do think that they have some white pigment in there that makes it a little bit more opaque. And also the light ochre, as far as I can tell, looks relatively opaque. I did not check the color information to verify that, but just from what I could tell from the handling. I didn't want to paint super close to the reference. I wanted to have some painterly effects in there, but I'm really quite new on how to achieve that. I do think that it helps if you don't have too many brush strokes, too many layers, and I put quite a few layers, which kind of helps with fur texture. I think when you have a lot of layers, that kind of gives the impression of fur. So I think it worked out here. And maybe if I had used fewer layers, that would come out quite right. But overall, I was just experimenting. Yeah. Here you can see me basically touch into the brown area of the fur that was still wet. So obviously that started bleeding into it, which technically is not really a problem as I was planning on darkening that part of the fur anyway. But yeah, also not cool if things bleed into each other that are not really supposed to. So with the tongue, I basically filled in first the main color and then tried some lifting techniques. So I basically drained the color and water from the brush and then dipped it back in just to create some highlights on the tip of the tongue. And I do really like how that came out at the end. I do think that it looks really nice, and I actually did not have to go over the tongue with color pencil at all, which I don't know, is kind of the technique that saves the day. You know, if you're not really happy with the watercolor details, you can go over them with color pencil, but I do want to keep that to a minimum, even though I do like watercolor and color pencil portraits quite a bit. I do think it's very beautiful that you can add some very sharp details in some areas, and then other areas are just loose watercolor. That's something that I really enjoy. So there's actually a YouTube channel of someone who uses the watercolor and colored pencil technique really, really nicely. I really appreciate her style, and it's Lioba. She does watercolor and colored pencil portraits and also works with acrylics and oils, but her watercolor and colored pencil technique is really interesting. Basically, she tries to keep abstract effects where she can, and then goes in with a colored pencil to add details on the faces, usually of the portraits. And I do really like that. I do like that she puts focus in some places and leaves others relatively, let the watercolors do their thing and work their magic. And that's something that I'm aspiring to learn about watercolor as well. To just leave some aspects more loose, and then other things are more tight as far as the details go. It's pretty much my approach that I have had with drawing in the first place. I mean, even when I'm practicing my sketches, I put a lot of effort into the faces, but then as far as the hair goes, it's always just a mess. I never put much emphasis on that. But I mean, that's a personal thing. But I do like the versatility of watercolor. You can do so much with them. You can paint very tightly if you choose to do so. You can, if you want to, you can control the watercolor, but you can also just let it take over and do its own thing. And I don't know, that's kind of magical about watercolor, isn't it? That if you just let it do its thing, then it'll give you a much different result than whatever you would have done. And I don't know, it seems a bit strange maybe, but I do really appreciate that about watercolor. Versatility. Also, I got a set of new watercolor brushes. So I got this Princeton Neptune brush. It's a size 6, I believe. Has a very nice fine point, so it's a size 6 round brush. And then I got 2 other ones. One of them is a 4 script brush, so the bristles are a little bit longer. And then also I got a number 0 or 1, so a very, very fine one. I didn't use those 2 for this portrait, so I just used the number 6 round brush for this portrait, and the other brush that you saw me use earlier, the French watercolor brush, I had already owned that before, and I really like it, but it's also not suitable for everything, just because the bristles have absolutely zero snap, so they flop over and then they stay in that position. So that's very interesting for some aspects, but it's definitely not awesome for everything. So I do appreciate that I now have this Neptune brush, which is nice for details, and it also has a little bit of snap, and then the bristles basically go back into the initial position. That's nice too. I do like that there's also quite a range of watercolor brushes, and I don't think that you have to have many. I'm actually, I was taught early when I first got introduced to watercolor that if you have like a big brush with a fine tip, you can do a lot with it, and I found that to be true. And yeah, I'm not very much into watercolor, but I was able to get a lot done with just one brush in the beginning. And well, I can't brag about my watercolor experience from a few years ago because I never really knew how to use them, to be quite honest. The first time that I tried using watercolor, I tried to use them like gouache, and I was so confused that the layers were so transparent and there was no brightness, and I didn't know how to work with them. I had no idea that you were supposed to layer them. I had no idea that they were supposed to be this transparent, so I just thought that the watercolor that I had was, I don't know, defective or just a medium that I was never going to like. And then of course at some point I found YouTube videos that basically showed me how watercolor is meant to be used, and after that I experimented more with them, and I've grown to actually really like them, which yeah, basically is the reason why I wanted to get a professional watercolor set to, I don't know, see what else I could do with watercolor. And yeah, but I will say that I really like my Schmincke Academy watercolor. I mean, obviously from testing them out first, I can tell a bit of a difference, but it's not a gigantic difference. And I think I would have to compare the two Schmincke, the artist grade and the student quality, side by side to really see the difference. And I also think that one of the major differences may be in the pigments and in the light fastness of the paints. I'm not quite sure, I didn't do a thorough research on that. But yeah, maybe I'll have to compare them side by side just to see exactly the difference between the two. Yeah, for some of the white hair details, I use white gouache. That's actually also Schmincke Horadam gouache. So I knew from the beginning that I didn't have to spare out like the white highlights in the eyes and stuff, but I did try to spare them out as best as I could. And I think with the detail brushes that was actually relatively easy to achieve. But yeah, I added the white gouache especially for the hairs, because otherwise I think I would have had a bit of a problem to really render the fur in a way that looked convincing, but at the same time, yeah, don't paint every individual strand, which is way too tedious. And then I went in with colored pencil at the end. I mainly used the Faber Castell Polychromos colored pencil, but I also, and that is inspired by Lioba, also got a few of the Caran Luminance pencils, which are wax-based, and they're really nice to blend out and smooth out the colored pencil on the watercolor paper, which by the way is hot pressed paper, so it doesn't have a lot of grain, but you can still see the texture underneath the colored pencil. So with the wax-based pencils, you can smooth out that texture a little bit, and that's really, really nice. Yeah, and I basically just added some details in the eyes and in the nose, and yeah, a little bit of the white hairs. I tried to give a little bit more definition with the colored pencil as well. Overall, I'm really happy with the result. I do actually really like the abstractions that I left in the feet, that I just did not render them perfectly, which is just a nice contrast to the details that, yeah, you can see in the face. So I'm, yeah, very happy with it. I hope you liked this video. Thank you for watching, and until next time, maybe.